Book of Exodus, Return to Promised Land. This particular one, I know you can't see that, but that bothers me. The Egyptian Jew. We talked about, we started out in the first chapter of the book of Exodus. A couple of weeks we've been on the first chapter of the book of Exodus. What happened with the people, how long the people were in Egypt, and so on. And so today we're going to continue into introducing more about Moses, who in all of the entire Bible, there's nobody that's written more about than Moses in the whole Old Testament, and second is Joseph. Anyway, Exodus chapter 2. You keep my voice going. Exodus chapter 2, starting with verse 1. Now a man from the family of Levi married a Levite woman. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it in asphalt and pitch. She placed the child in it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Then his sister stood by at a distance in order to see what would happen to him. So I have a commentary here from a Jewish rabbi, and this is what he says. He said, this is another example of the Torah communicating the Exodus, which includes the 10 Commandments at Sinai, begins a new creation. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I was telling you from the Jewish standpoint, many Jewish rabbis believe that this is the third attempt of God's, if you will, at the creation. The first one was Adam and Eve, and then with Noah afterwards, and now with Moses and through a specific lineage of people, which is the Jewish people. This is the way many of their rabbis teach. So he says, begins the new creation just as God saved Noah with a teva. And you notice it's the same word, set in water. He will save Moses in a teva, set in water. Just as in Genesis, God started a new world with Noah, he is in effect starting a new world with Moses and the Jews. And you'll see there, the way they pronounce it in the Hebrew is more, I would say, tabal is the way it shows it there. And it's a box or an ark. So when it talks about the ark and it talks about this basket that Moses was in, it's the same Hebrew word that's used for both of those, and that's where he drew this particular analogy. And it says, now a man of a family of Levi married a Levite woman. Who were the Levites? Pardon me? The sons of Levi. Now, who was Levi? He was the son of Jacob, the son of Israel. Somebody said a priestly line. Not yet. I forgot that in here. I said, were they a priestly line at this time? No, because the 10 Commandments hadn't been written, the law hadn't been written, none of this had been put in place, so the Levites had not been separated out from the rest of the Jewish people, as they would be later on in the book of Leviticus the book of Exodus and into Leviticus, and some in Numbers, when it's talking about the Levite, the tribe of Levi. But at this particular time, and so I put a note down here, what was the last thing we read about Levi in the last part of the book of Genesis before we get into Exodus? And I'll read it to you. It's in the 49th chapter, the 5th verse of Genesis. And it's Jacob, Israel, talking to his 12 sons and telling them things about them, prophesying things as well as telling things. This is what he says. He said, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their knives are vicious weapons. May I never enter their council. May I never join their assembly. For in their anger they kill men, and on a whim they hamstring oxen. Their anger is cursed, for it is strong, and their fury, for it is cruel. I will disperse them throughout Jacob and scatter them throughout Israel. Does that sound very good, talking about Levi and the tribe of Levi? That's the last thing that we have about Levi. So now we have, as we get into Exodus, we're talking about a man that's a Levite who married a Levite, so they're not of any particular prestige at this time. They're just everyday, common, everyday Jewish people. There's nothing to make them special. I put this, up until now, the only special thing about the Levites was that Moses, who would be the deliverer of Israel, was born of the tribe of Levi, up until this particular time in the book of Exodus. And there's reasons why they'll be selected out later on, and we'll talk about that later in the book of Exodus. Later on, they become part of the priestly line, as well as the line that takes care of the temple, takes care of the tabernacle. You remember they were traveling to start with when the tabernacle was built, and they had to package it all up when they moved somewhere else, and the tribe of Levi was who was responsible for that. Some Jewish scholars state that the reason that Moses' birth was so average was so that nobody would, after he died, they wouldn't worship him. I don't know that that's the reason, but I think it's just because they wanted to make a statement. This is the family he comes from, because later on it'll be important. It's not up to this point. But many of the Jewish scholars, this particular, you remember Genesis and Exodus, a lot of this teaching is based on a particular Jewish teacher that I'm getting this from, because I want us to look at it from a Hebrew perspective as much as we can. It says, when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. And I said, what if it had been ugly? And I put a comment there that most mothers think their baby's beautiful anyway. And I know when I see a brand new newborn baby whose head still hadn't gotten straightened out, and he's purple, and they say, she's so pretty, or he's so beautiful. And I think, I'm sorry, but that doesn't look, not yet. Give him a little bit of time. But to a mother, the baby is always beautiful. It's always pretty. So is there more to this word than what we see here? So the word, and I'm not going to read all of this. This is the word that was used that they get in the King James. It says goodly. In the Holman Christian Standard and Christian Standard Bible, many of it says beautiful. They use different words. But anyway, this is the word. This is the Hebrew word, and that's the way it's spelled in case you want to write it down in Hebrew. It's something interesting. When you copy something that's Hebrew like that and you go to delete it a letter at a time, you have to go backwards because Hebrew is backwards. So if you try to go back this way, it won't let you delete it. So you have to delete it from the other end, in case you ever wanted to know that. But so if you're reading that Hebrew, it's written back in the other direction. But anyway, this says good as an adjective in the widest sense, used likewise as a noun, both in the masculine and the feminine, the singular and the plural. Good, a good thing, a good man, a good woman, a good thing, a good man. Goes right on down, it keeps going, and we get down to the bottom, it says to be in favor, fine, glad, good, and that's where they get the goodly from. And kindness, liketh, it would be in King James English. Best, loving, merry, most pleasant, pleasanteth, or pleaseth, pleasure, precious, prosperity. It means a lot of different things. So when it uses this word, what I'm getting at is, it doesn't necessarily mean just because he was a beautiful baby, she wanted to keep him. She'd wanted to keep him anyway. What was the edict that had come down from Pharaoh about baby boys? When they're born, you kill them. I want you to throw them in the Nile, get rid of them, destroy them. But she didn't want to, so I had to have an idea. It had to do more with, she didn't see into the future. She didn't know he would be the deliverer of Israel, I'm quite sure at this particular time. But she gave birth to this boy. Let me read this. Why was she so adamant about hiding him? And then when she could not hide him, she made provision for him to float in the water, hidden among the reeds of the Nile. Now, what many people say is, and many people believe, and you can believe this is fine with me, I don't have a problem with it. They say that she put him in that basket and put him in the Nile, close to where the Pharaoh's daughter would be, so that the Pharaoh's daughter would discover him. The Bible doesn't tell us all that. Movies tell us that, books tell us that, but the Bible doesn't tell us that. It's from the way it's written, it's like she was hiding him, so that's the best place she could hide him, and she put his sister there to keep an eye on him, to see what would happen. Think about this, and I might have put this down. Yeah. And I put, was this a plan to get Pharaoh's daughter to adopt him? Who was it that commanded that all the baby boys be killed? All the baby Hebrew boys. It was her dad. So why would Moses' mother think that if she could get Pharaoh's daughter to take in her son, that she would do anything other than have him killed? She wouldn't know. So we know, because we believe in God, that God's divine providence, He does certain things and does certain things certain ways. But she could have reacted either way. She could have done what she did and have adopted him, or she could have had him killed, because that's what her father had told. That's the edict of the land. And so it gets back to the question. This is more stuff. I'm reading between the lines here now, because it's not in the Bible. When she brought him in and she adopted him, she knew that he was Hebrew. She says that. And her father would have known that he was Hebrew, so why didn't he have him killed? We don't know. It doesn't tell us. But anyway, that's something for you to think on. And Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe at the Nile while her servant girls walked along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds, sent her slave girl, took it, opened it, and saw him, the child, and there he was, a little boy, crying. She felt sorry for him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew boys." So she knew that he was Hebrew. How many of you have seen the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston? How does Moses discover that he's Hebrew in the movie? The cloth he was wrapped in. Is that in the Bible? No. No, that's all Hollywood, and it's fine. We don't know exactly how it's done, but there's a good chance, and there's a good chance that he grew up knowing that he was Hebrew and was adopted as an Egyptian. There was a good chance of that. We're not told one way or the other, but there's reasons for that, and we'll talk about it in a minute. And I had all that down here. So then his sister stood at a distance in order to see what would happen to him. Judaism 101, this is a quote from out of that particular book. It says, Miriam was Aaron and Moses' older sister. According to some sources, she was 7 years older than Moses, but other sources seem to indicate that she was older than that. Some sources indicate that Miriam was Puah, one of the midwives who rescued Hebrew babies from Pharaoh's edict against them. So some Jewish rabbis teach that she was Puah. Well, it'd be hard to believe that she was a midwife when she was the oldest I have seen in any writings that people think she was like 12 years old. And I can't think of many midwives being 12 years old. But that's what some of the Jewish rabbis think. So, how old is it relevant to this story how old Miriam was? The only reason it's relevant, pardon me? It would have been in here. But here the relevance to me is she was the younger, and we know that she was, Aaron was like 4 years older than Moses, and Miriam was older than him. So she was the oldest out of the three of them. So what it says to me is, for a 12-year-old or anywhere from 7 to 12-year-old to react the way that she did and to handle the things the way she did was quite, that's more adult thinking than what most 12-year-olds do. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, should I go and call a Hebrew woman who is nursing to nurse the boy for you? So you see what she offers. Now, thinking that if she's 12 years old, her thinking this far ahead, did her mother tell her to do that? Don't know. Tell Pharaoh's daughter. Go, Pharaoh's daughter told her. So the girl went and called the boy's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay your wages. So the woman took the boy and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because, she said, I drew him out of the water. And even in the Egyptian or in the Hebrew, the name Moses has to do with drawing him out of the water, either one which way you want to see it. Here's another tell as far as I'm concerned. The custom of that day, women nursed their babies until they were like 3 years old. Well, if he was 3 years old when she was still nursing him, I remember when I was 3 years old. Does anybody here remember when you were that young? I remember when I was 3 years old because of things that happened, and I've talked to my parents about it years ago, and they said to me, well, you were about 3 years old when that occurred. So I remember when I was 3 years old. So Moses would have had some remembrance of his mother. Did he ever see her again during this time? We don't know, because the Bible skips a lot if the Bible took time to do a biography of everybody that it has in there, how long would the Bible be? You wouldn't. It would take me. It would take a while. A statement I put down here at the bottom, of course, Miriam made the suggestion of a Hebrew woman. Of course, she knew who she was going to get to do that, and which would be her mother, be Moses' mother, to do that. But some people suggest, as I put a statement down here, that a Hebrew woman would not have wanted to nurse, an Egyptian woman would not have wanted to nurse a Hebrew baby. And they make a reference to how many women in the Old South back in the and before the Civil War white women would have nursed a black baby. Well, to me, that's not a good comparison, because we're looking at, there's nothing to tell us here that the Egyptians thought they were better than the Jews, or the Jews were better than the Egyptians. So that's surmising. That's coming up with an opinion, and that opinion might be true. I have no idea. But I think it was more than that Miriam wanted her mother to be the one that nursed this baby, plain and simple. Pharaoh's daughter couldn't, but she could. But she could have sent for a Egyptian wet nurse. That's normally what they would do. But instead of that, Miriam suggested that we get a Hebrew. Well, that's a good idea, considering it's a Hebrew baby, and it just happens to be his mother. That worked out nice. Years later, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people and observed their forced labor. Said he went out to his own people. He saw in the Ten Commandments, did he kill the Egyptian before he found out he was a Hebrew, or after? I can't remember in the movie. It doesn't matter. Pardon me?
In the Ten Commandments, he left Pharaoh's palace to go to the Hebrew camp.
After he found out he was Hebrew. Okay. I got you. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. It's interesting the way they make these movies, and I'm not criticizing that movie, because people are trying to put things create a movie, and I like the movie overall. He saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his people. Looking all around and seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian dead and hid him in the sand. And I put the question that has to do with did he know that he was a Hebrew? I think he did. All the time he knew he was a Hebrew the whole time he was growing up personally, and that's Randy's opinion. So that means it must be right, since it's my opinion. The Talmud, is a commentary on the Torah, on the Hebrew Scriptures, if you will. It's many, many volumes. So if you want to read the commentary on the Torah from Jewish source, you can get it, but you're going to be reading for a long time. There's a lot of writing there. And it says, Jochebed gave birth to Moses. Batya, the Hebrew name given to Pharaoh's daughter, don't know where they got that, meaning daughter of God, raised him. Therefore, he is identified as her child. According to Jewish custom at that particular time, the one who raised the child was the mother, not the one who necessarily gave birth. That was Jewish thinking at that particular time. And they thought, and Pharaoh's daughter holds a high position in a lot of Hebrew writings because of that. The Jewish commentary that I'm using on this gives 3 reasons that you see in this about Moses' exceptionalism, why he would be chosen to be the one to lead them back to the Promised Land. 1, he fights evil. 2, he later would command respect because he was not raised among them. 3, Moses did not have a slave mentality. All that could be true. I don't know. Again, this is something the Bible doesn't tell us. But it's food for thought. That would make it different because they would look at Moses differently than they would people raised in the Hebrew community because he was also an Egyptian. Remember, at the first of this, I put a Jewish Egyptian or whatever, how you want to look at it, because he was both. He was in a unique position because he was raised in an Egyptian household, but he was born a Hebrew, and his bloodline was Hebrew, so he had an affinity with the Hebrew people, and he had an affinity for the Egyptian people as well. Was Moses justified in killing the Egyptian? But he was beaten up on a Hebrew. This is all of a matter of opinion, whether you think he was justified or not, but he did it. And it created problems because of this. Verse 13. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He thought he had done this. He'd gotten away with it. Everything was fine. He hid the body. There was no problem whatsoever. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your neighbor? Who made you a commander and judge over us?" The man replied, "Are you planning to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" He said, "Uh-oh." Then Moses became afraid and thought, "What I did is certainly known." He thought he had done it in secret, and he hadn't done it in secret. So was all this part of God's plan, do you think? Do you think if God had come to Moses before any of this happened and said, "Listen, Moses, in a few years, about 40 years, I'm going to want you to lead the Hebrew people out of Egypt and carry them back to the Promised Land"? What do you think Moses would have said? He said, "Am I hearing things? Did I eat something I shouldn't eat?" But God works it out in a different way. So he takes him to a different place. And I said, notice that the man did not answer Moses' question. Moses asked him a question. He didn't answer that. He just made an accusation. When Pharaoh heard about this, he tried to kill Moses. And Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. Okay. Here's the map. Over here's Egypt, the land of Goshen, where the Jews had settled. And you see all the different areas that we have in Egypt. And down here is Midian. When you read it in the Bible, he went from Egypt to Midian. That's like driving to Ridgeland. But it is not. It's from all the way over here to all the way over here, and he has a lot of, this is desert in here. Pardon me? Well, he could have taken a boat. It doesn't say how he got there. No, it's things have changed since then, and to show you, this is a modern day version of the same area, but it's to put it in perspective. Right here is where Midian was at that particular time. There's a place called Midian today, but it's way over here. It's nowhere close to here. But this was the area that's where Midian is when we're part of Saudi Arabia now, just south of Jordan and Israel, off the Sinai Peninsula. And over here there's Cairo, Egypt, marked in red. But you can see even from that's a long way, even looking on our map today. That's many miles. I think it's like, I got it in the next slide, about 250 miles. He went about 250 miles before he stopped. I mean, he stopped all along. Pardon me? He was getting away from there as far away as he could, because if he knew if he was in Pharaoh's reach, he'd be a dead man. It's just that simple. He would not have lived through it. But he lived, so to me, seeing that on the map helps me to picture it better. And it helps me to see this is what Moses did. This is where he went. So when he went back to deliver the people, how far did he have to go? 250 miles. He had to do the same thing when he came back. Verse 16. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Then some shepherds arrived and drove them away. But Moses came to their rescue and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, what's his other name? For their father Reuel, he asked, there's about 4 different names he's referred to as in the Old Testament here. But this is one of them. Why have you come? Jethro is one of them, yes. Why have you come back so quickly today? They answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. What did they not do? Next, they said, so where is he? Their father said, where is he? He went down and helped you water all the flocks. He drove all these shepherds away by himself, so he must be a pretty a healthy fella. He runs all of them away, and you come back telling me about it. Where is he? He asked his daughters, why then did you leave the man behind? Invite him to eat dinner. Moses agreed to stay with the man. He gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. She gave birth to a son, whom she named Gershom. For she said, I have been a resident alien in a foreign, for he said, I have been a resident alien in a foreign land. You notice it never says Moses, in the movie you see that he falls for Zipporah. It's head over heels in love with her, and he was just special to her. None of this is said in the Bible. It doesn't, and it reminds me of the story, and if you've heard me tell this story many times before, Abraham Lincoln, it was him and his sister, and they had moved from Kentucky to Illinois, and they were living out in the wilderness, a one-room cabin out in the wilderness, and the father didn't want the cabin to flood, so he built it way away from the water, so they had to walk for a long way to bring water back. Anyway, Lincoln's mother died, and the dad told him one day, he said, told Abraham, he said, told Lincoln, he said, I need you to watch after your sister for a little while. And he packed up the wagon and drove all the way back where he was from. And he walked up on the front porch of this lady, or in front of this house of this lady, whose husband had died. And he said, knocked on the door, she comes to the door, he said, my wife has died, your husband has died, would you like to get married? And she said, yeah. So she packs up and gets in the wagon with him and rides back. And that's who Abraham Lincoln remembered and writes so fondly of as his mother. Well, that's kind of like the story here it sounds like with when you're talking about Moses and Zipporah, it was just, here, this is my daughter, she's yours, have some grandchildren for me. It just didn't negotiate, didn't ask anybody any questions, anything else. This is the way we're going to do it. Pardon me? Well, I'm not into reading a lot of love stories, but I do read about some romance and some people within our history, our founding fathers, who were very romantic with their wives and romance was involved. But I'm just saying, this reminds me of Abraham Lincoln, of his father, the way he did, and that was the way it looked here. So my point is, this does not have to do with emotion. This has to do with what they decided to do at the time, and it worked out.
What does love have to do with it?
But with the Jewish people, I mean, even today, some of them, they still have, in the Orthodox, they do have arranged marriage.
There's friends of ours who are Indian, and their son, was it both of them or one of their sons? They said, they've been living over here. They were born over here. These boys were born over here. They said, we don't want any of these American girls. And they still arranged marriages, and they went back and got him a wife, and he married her. But did you know one of the lowest divorce rates in the world is India, where they arrange marriages? So maybe there's...
Second, third, fourth, fifth wives after the first one.
yes, so maybe that's... I'm not saying we should put that into practice here. I'm just saying...
Women don't roll like that.
No. So where is he? And he winds up marrying her and having children with her. Verse 23. After a long time, the king of Egypt died. Which Pharaoh was it?
One of the Ramesses.
That's what the Ten Commandments movie says. It probably was not. I don't know I don't want to burst your bubble or anything, but it was probably not Ramesses, because he was many hundred years apart from when the Exodus most likely happened. And nobody, even as many scholars and different people have I've read, there's not agreement as to which Pharaoh it was. So we don't know for sure. I've heard all kinds of stories.
Well, they didn't remember Joseph, though.
Yeah, but think about this. He didn't remember Joseph. That was 400 years back. Question here, and I think I've probably got this written down here somewhere. In fact, the next slide says something about it. 400 years they were in Egypt. How many years was Pharaoh and friendly to the Hebrews, and how many years was he not? Which Pharaoh was it? Over 400 years, how many Pharaohs do you think they went through? They went through several of them. So it could have been 3 or 4 of them were very good to the Hebrews. And this last one was good to the Hebrews until he got afraid of them, afraid that they'd create problems. So there's no way of knowing that. But it said after a long time, he died. The Israelites groaned because of their difficult labor. They cried out, and their cry for help because of the difficult labor ascended to God. God heard their groaning. So it said God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, with Jacob. And God saw the Israelites, and God knew. God saw the Israelites, and God knew. It says God saw the Israelites. He heard their groaning. How much groaning had they done up until now? Every time you're miserable and groaning and you're having a hard time, does God come to your rescue immediately? Does he every time? Did he to the Hebrew people every time? All the time? Why was it that this particular time that he came on the scene at this time to rescue them? Here's an opinion. Now you can do what you want to with this opinion. If things were going well with the Hebrew people in relation to the Egyptians, they wouldn't have wanted to go back. I mean, your family has been living here for 400 years. For 400 years.
That's what happened in Babylon.
For 400 years. Geneva, how long your family been living here? Kevin? How long your family? Don't have any idea. We don't go.
Alice's family has got an original charter, the original land charter that they got from England, they were from Scotland,
But what year?
1746.
Okay, so the 1746, was that 400 years ago? No, it was less than 400 years.
We know those, we got a copy of the charter.
Well, the Brown side of my family, my father's side, my grandmother on that side was a Brown. I have the Brown family tree from the time that the Browns came over from Scotland and Ireland to the United States, and it was like 1780 or something like that. So I don't. Thinking about your family has been in a place for 400 years, you wouldn't want to go somewhere else unless it got bad. Pardon me?
Don't ask Alice.
He's not going anywhere. But you wouldn't want to go anywhere. But if it got miserable, it got to the point there was a reason for this. Remember down here it says, it doesn't say here, it says, God heard their groanings, and God said they're groaning and they're having a hard time. I'm going to deliver them. What does it say? Read what I got underlined. It says, God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. It was because of the covenant that he's going to do what he's about to do with Moses. More so than the fact that they're groaning and what happened, we'll see it later in Exodus, when Moses finally got them delivered and they were out in the wilderness and they get up to the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army's behind them, and they say, the people crying to Moses, why did you bring us out of Egypt? We told you all the time we didn't want to leave Egypt. We had it good while we were there. That's basically what they said. They were lying. But you got short memories. People have short memories. And I put here. And I said, do you think that God had forgotten about his covenant in 400 plus years? No. He just had to get time for them to be ready. God heard their groaning and God remembered his covenant. Why had he not heard their groaning before? How many years were they in Egypt? 400 plus years. How many of these years were they treated like slaves? Don't know. Could have been 20 years. Could have been 10 years. Could have been 30 years. Don't have any idea. How long had this Pharaoh been Pharaoh at that particular time when he enslaved them? We don't know. And we don't know at what point he enslaved them. We don't know any of that. How many years were they treated well? We don't know. So to me, this is I don't think like normal, sane people. Knowing things like this, to me, when I can see this, and I can see it's 400 years, and then I think, well, they could have been treated well for 350 years. They could have been treated well for 370 years. We don't have any idea. But that would explain things a lot better if that was the case. And there might have been, from the time of the Pharaoh that knew Joseph, this could have been the fifth Pharaoh. We don't have any idea. I asked this question, I think, before when we started this particular teaching. Why is it in the Egyptian hieroglyphics there's not any writing anywhere about the Hebrew people being delivered from Egypt? You wouldn't... Well, it's even worse, because if you were the scribe and you started writing this story down and the Pharaoh saw it, he'd get rid of you and he'd get somebody to erase that and start again. We're going to tell a different story. So when people bring that up, I say, listen, do you think you're going to tell about that? No. Everything that's written about the pharaohs in all the Egyptian hieroglyphics is how great and wonderful they are. All their wonderful victories they had, all that kind of stuff is what you hear. And I put here, why does God not act every time he hears his people groan? He'd have to be acting all the time because we're a complaining bunch of people. And don't you know, if you're sitting there saying, They're griping again, complaining. What can I do? I've given them all this. They're still griping and complaining. Three responses from a Jewish perspective. First, if God always intervened, humans would not have free will. Second, the only possible answer for unjust suffering is ultimate justice in the afterlife. Third, Rabbi Milton Steinberg wrote this, and I like this. The believer has to account for the existence of one thing, unjust suffering. The atheist has to account for the existence of everything else. So I thought that's a good way to put it. Questions or comments?